Jake Morrison walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber. His black shoes clicked softly on the shiny floor. The sound echoed in the huge room. He carried a small briefcase in his left hand and wore his best dark blue suit. His tie was straight and his hair was neat. He looked like any other human diplomat who had come here before. The chamber was enormous. It could hold thousands of beings. The ceiling was so high that Jake had to tilt his head back to see it. Strange lights hung from above, casting different colors across the room. The walls were made of some kind of metal that seemed to glow. Everything here was built to make visitors feel small. Around the curved walls sat the representatives of 47 different alien species. Each one looked completely different from the others. Some had scales, others had fur. Some were tall and thin, others were short and round. A few looked like they were made of crystal or stone. Their eyes all turned to watch Jake as he walked to the center of the chamber. Jake stopped at a small platform in the middle of the room. Above him, Council Leader Vexstar looked down from his high seat. Vexstar was a hegemony official. Haida. He was 8 feet tall with gray skin and 4 arms. His eyes were bright yellow and seemed to glow in the dim light. When he spoke, his voice was deep and made the floor vibrate. Human Ambassador Morrison, Vexstar said. His tone was not friendly. You are here to discuss the mining rights in the Outer Rim territories. Jake smiled and bowed his head slightly. Thank you, Council Leader. I am honored to speak before this great assembly. His voice was calm and polite. He had practiced this tone for years. Next to Jake stood Amy Foster, his aide. She was a young woman with brown hair tied back in a neat ponytail. She wore a simple, gray dress and carried a tablet computer. She looked nervous, but that was normal for humans in this place. Amy had been with Jake for 2 years. She always took careful notes during these meetings. The human colonies in the Outer Rim have been mining those asteroids for 3 years, Jake continued. We have followed all the rules set by this council. We have paid all the required fees. We have harmed no other species in our work. A loud snort came from the left side of the chamber. It was from Crystal, the Zephyrian representative. Zephyrians looked like giant birds with blue feathers and sharp beaks. Crystal was known for his rude comments about humans. The servants speak of their work, Crystal said with a harsh laugh. How cute. Tell us, human, how much metal did you dig up to buy your seat at this table? Other aliens in the chamber made sounds that Jake knew were laughter. The crystalline collector representatives made a sound like wind chimes. The Aquatic Federation members bubbled in their water tanks. Even the plant-like beings from the forest worlds rustled their leaves in amusement. Jake's smile never changed. He had heard worse insults many times before. Extracted 2.7 million tons of rare metals. Last year, he said calmly. All of it was processed according to galactic environmental standards. We donated 15% of our profits to the Council's humanitarian fund. How generous, said another voice. This came from Zareth, a member of the Crystalline Collective. Her body looked like it was made of purple glass. When she spoke, her voice sounded like music. The humans give us their pocket change and expect praise. Jake nodded politely. We give what we can, honor to Zareth. We know we are still new to this galaxy. We have much to learn from the wisdom of older species. Amy made a note on her tablet. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. To anyone watching, it looked like she was recording Jake's words. But she was actually noting something else entirely. She was recording the exact location of each species representative. She was noting which ones seemed hostile and which ones seemed neutral. This information would be very useful later. Vexstar raised one of his 4 hands for silence. The chamber became quiet. The hegemony has decided that the Outer Rim mining rights should be redistributed, he announced. The current human operations are too small to be efficient. We will be taking over those asteroid fields. Jake's face showed surprise and disappointment, but not anger. I see, he said slowly. May I ask what will happen to the human workers currently stationed there? They may apply for employment with the Gemini mining operations, Vexstar replied, if they meet our standards. Jake knew what those standards were. It's the hegemony used. Slave labor in their minds. Human workers would be treated like property, not employees. But he did not say this out loud. We understand the council's decision, Jake said with another bow. We will begin evacuating our people immediately. We would not want to interfere with the hegemony's operations. The aliens in the chamber seemed pleased with this response. The humans were being obedient, as always. They never fought back. They never argued. They just accepted whatever the council decided and said thank you. Amy continued taking notes. She recorded the satisfied expressions on the alien faces. She noted which species seemed to support the hegemony's decision. She also noted something else that the aliens did not see. Behind Jake's polite smile, his eyes had become very cold for just a moment. Then the expression was gone, replaced by the same friendly look as before. Is there anything else the council requires of us? Jake asked. Yes, said Vexter. The human colonies in the Kepler system have been reporting strange readings from their sensor arrays. We want those sensors recalibrated to match galactic standards. Jake's smile became a little wider. Of course, council leader. We will have our technicians make those adjustments right away. What Vexstar did not know was that those sensors were not broken. They were working perfectly. They had been recording every ship movement in and out of hegemony space for the past 6 months. The strange readings were just a cover story. The humans are so helpful, whispered one alien to another. Almost too helpful, Tiza, because they are weak, replied the other. Okay. They know they cannot survive without our protection. Okay. Heard these whispers. His enhanced hearing could pick up conversations from across the chamber. But his face showed no sign that he had heard anything. He continued to stand patiently, waiting for the council to dismiss him. Finally, Vexter waved one of his hands. The human delegation may leave. We'll expect full compliance with our decisions within 30 days. Jake bowed deeply. Thank you for your time, honored council members. It has been a privilege to serve. As Jake and Amy walked toward the exit, aliens throughout the chamber whispered among themselves. The humans were so polite, so eager to please. They were like trained pets, happy to do whatever their masters commanded. But if any of the aliens had looked closely at Amy's tablet as she passed by, they might have seen something interesting. Her screen did not show meeting notes. Instead, it showed detailed floor plans of the council chamber, complete with security positions and emergency exits. It showed the personal schedules of key council members. It showed shipping manifests for military supplies heading to hegemony space. The humans had been gathering intelligence for 3 years. Every polite question, every helpful suggestion, every act of generous cooperation had been designed to collect information. The aliens saw weakness where there was actually patience. They saw servitude where there was actually preparation. As the chamber doors closed behind them, Jake finally allowed his smile to fade. In the empty hallway, he looked at Amy and nodded once. She understood the signal. Phase 1 was complete. It was time to begin Phase 2. The moment the Galactic Council realized that humanity's courtesy was just a facade was still months away. But the countdown had already begun. Captain Lisa Hayes stood on the bridge of the Terra Nova, watching the stars through the main viewing screen. Her ship was 3 days out from the Galactic Council station, heading toward the unexplored regions of the Vega sector. On paper, this was a simple survey mission. It's the kind of boring work that the Council always gave to human ships. Lisa was 35 years old, with short red hair and green eyes. She wore the standard blue uniform of the Human Exploration Service. The uniform looked simple and peaceful, just like everything else about humanity that the aliens had seen. But Lisa knew things that would make those aliens very nervous. Her crew of 42 was handpicked. Each person had skills that went far beyond simple exploration. The woman at the communication station, Nancy Clark, could break alien encryption codes in minutes. The man at the weapons console, Tony Martinez, had trained with the most advanced military systems in human space. Even the ship's cook, old Pete Williams, was actually a former Special Forces soldier. But none of this showed on the outside. The Terra Nova looked like any other human exploration vessel. It was painted white with peaceful blue markings. Sensor arrays appeared to be designed for scientific research. Its cargo holds seemed to carry only supplies and survey equipment. Lisa walked over to her first officer, Commander Ben Rogers. He was a tall man with dark skin and a calm expression. Like everyone else on the ship, he played his role perfectly. "Teeny, word from the outer colonies," Lisa asked quietly. Ben checked his tablet. Colony 7 reports normal operations. Colony 12 says their mining equipment is working well. Colony 15 has finished their agricultural surveys. To anyone listening, this sounded like routine colony reports. But Lisa knew the real meaning. Colony 7 was actually a military training base. Colony 12 was testing new weapon systems. Colony 15 was building a fleet of warships disguised as cargo vessels. Suddenly, the ship's alarm system began to beep. Nancy Clark looked up from her station with concern. "Captain, I'm receiving a distress signal," she reported. "It's coming from a Zephyrian research station about 2 hours away." Lisa frowned. "What kind of distress?" They say they're under attack by unknown hostiles. They're requesting immediate assistance for civilian evacuation." Ben moved closer to Lisa. "Should we respond?" he asked. Lisa nodded without hesitation. "Set course for the Zephyrian station. Maximum speed." As the Terra Nova changed direction, Lisa thought about the situation. The Zephyrians were one of the species that treated humans poorly in the council chambers. They called humans servants and made jokes about human weakness. But that did not matter now. People were in danger, and Lisa would not let civilians die if she could help them. 2 hours later, the Terra Nova arrived at the research station. What they found was chaos. The station was a large metal structure floating in space. It had several sections connected by long corridors. But now, parts of it were on fire. Pieces of metal were floating away from explosion damage. 3 strange ships were attacking the station. Lisa had never seen ships like these before. They were black and had sharp angles that hurt to look at. They moved in ways that seemed impossible, turning and diving like living creatures. "Unknown attackers. This is Captain Hayes of the Terra Nova," Lisa broadcast on all frequencies. "You are attacking a civilian station. Stop your assault immediately." The black ships ignored her completely. They continued firing at the research station with weapons that created bright purple beams. "Tony, can you identify those ships?" Lisa asked. Tony Martinez worked at his console for several minutes. "Negative, Captain. They're not in any database I can access. Their technology appears to be completely unknown." Lisa made her decision quickly. "All hands, prepare for rescue operations. Nancy, contact the Zephyrian station. Tell them we're coming to help." The Zephyrian station commander, a being named Shrikstol, appeared on the main screen. His blue feathers were ruffled with panic, and his sharp beak was opening and closing rapidly. "It's a human vessel," he squawked. "You must leave this area immediately. These attackers are too dangerous." "We're not leaving," Lisa said firmly. "How many civilians do you have aboard?" Shrikstol looked surprised by her determination. 300 researchers and their families. But your small ship cannot possibly stand against these attackers." Lisa smiled. Let us worry about that. Begin evacuating your people to the docking bays. We'll provide cover. Okay, what happened next surprised everyone, including Lisa's own crew. The Terra Nova began moving toward the attacking ships, and suddenly its appearance started to change. Panels on the hull slid open to reveal weapon systems that definitely did not belong on an exploration vessel. The ship's engines glowed brighter as more powerful systems came online. Tony, target the lead attacker, Lisa ordered. Use the new plasma cannons. Yes, Captain. Firing now. Bright blue energy beams shot out from the Terra Nova and struck the nearest black ship. The attacker's shields flared and failed immediately. The ship spun out of control and exploded in a ball of purple fire. The other two attacking ships turned toward the Terra Nova, clearly surprised. They had expected an easy target, not a fight. Nancy, scan those ships while we have their attention, Lisa commanded. I want to know everything about them. It's already on it, Captain. Getting detailed readings of their hull composition, weapon signatures, and propulsion systems. The battle continued for 20 minutes. Terra Nova fought with skills and weapons that no exploration vessel should have possessed. The black ships were advanced, but they had not expected to face real resistance. One by one, Lisa's crew destroyed them. During the fight, Ben Rogers was busy with his own task, while everyone was focused on the battle. He was scanning the Zephyrian research station. His sensors recorded the layout of every room, the location of every computer system, and the specifications of every piece of equipment. When the last attacker was destroyed, Lisa opened communications with the Zephyrian station again. Station. Commander, this is Captain Hayes. The threat has been eliminated. We're ready to begin evacuation procedures. Shriksdale stared at her from the screen. His yellow eyes were wide with amazement. Oh, how did your exploration ship have such powerful weapons? Lisa's expression remained calm and friendly. All human ships carry defensive systems, Commander. We may prefer peace, but we're not helpless. Over the next 4 hours, the Terra Nova evacuated all 300 Zephyrians from the damaged station. Lisa's crew worked efficiently, carrying children and elderly aliens to safety. They provided medical care for the injured and comfort for the frightened, but they also did something else. Every human who entered the research station carried small scanning devices. They recorded everything they saw: computer systems, research, files, weapon designs, communication equipment. All of it was quietly copied and stored. The Zephyrians were so grateful for the rescue that they did not notice these activities. They saw only human kindness and bravery. They began to think that maybe they had been wrong about humans being weak. After the evacuation was complete, Shriksdale personally thanked Lisa. Captain Hayes, your crew has shown great courage today. The Zephyrian Republic will not forget this kindness. Lisa smiled warmly. We were just doing what anyone would do, Commander. We're all sharing this galaxy together. As the Terra Nova departed with the rescued Zephyrians, Lisa reviewed the intelligence they had gathered. The black ships had been completely unknown, which was interesting but not immediately useful. However, the scans of the research station had revealed something very valuable. The Zephyrians had been developing new shield technology that could protect against most known weapons. They also had detailed maps of trade routes throughout their territory. Most importantly, they had communication codes that would allow someone to monitor Zephyrian military transmissions. Ben Rogers approached Lisa as she studied the data. The Zephyrians seemed genuinely grateful, he observed. Lisa nodded. Should be. We saved their lives. Learned quite a bit about their capabilities in the process. That too, Lisa agreed. Send this data to Earth through the usual channels. Command will want to analyze those unknown attackers. As the Terra Nova continued on its original survey mission, the rescued Zephyrians told stories about human heroism. They praised the courage and skill of Captain Hayes and her crew. They began to spread word throughout their territory that humans were not as weak as everyone thought, but they had no idea how right they were or how wrong they had been about human intentions. Their rescue had been genuine. Lisa would never have let civilians die, but it had also been an opportunity that the humans used very well. In her private quarters that night, Lisa made a secure transmission to Earth. Her message was brief and coded, but its meaning was clear. The intelligence gathering operation was proceeding ahead of schedule. Soon, humanity would know everything they needed to know about their galactic neighbors. The storm was still gathering, but it was growing stronger every day. The news reached the Galactic Council 3 days later. The hegemony had moved their war fleet to the edge of the Rigel system. 3 billion people lived on the planets there, members of 7 different species who had refused to surrender their worlds to hegemony control. Council leader Vextar stood before the emergency assembly. His 4 arms spread wide as he spoke. The rebels in the Rigel system have rejected our final offer of peaceful surrender. They choose war over wisdom. The hegemony fleet will restore order to this region. Jake Morrison sat in the human section of the chamber, his face showing deep concern. Next to him, Amy Foster was taking notes, as always. Around them, representatives from dozens of alien species murmured among themselves. Some seemed worried, others appeared to support the hegemony's decision. Council leader, Jake said, rising to his feet. "Okay, may I address the assembly?" Vextar looked down at him with barely hidden annoyance. "The human may speak." Jake walked to the center of the chamber, just as he had done many times before. But today felt different somehow. The tension in the room was thicker than usual. "Honored representatives," Jake began, his voice carrying clearly through the large space. "We are about to witness the destruction of 3 billion innocent lives. These are not soldiers or rebels. They are farmers, teachers, children, elderly beings who simply want to live in peace on their ancestral worlds." He paused, looking around the chamber at the alien faces watching him. "The human delegation cannot support military action against civilian populations. We believe there must be another way." Crystal, the Zephyrian representative, spoke up from his perch. "What do the servants suggest?" "More of your endless talking." Jake nodded seriously. "Yes, honored Crystal, more talking. But not just talking, action. We propose a humanitarian corridor through the Rigel system, allow civilian evacuation ships to remove non-combatants before any military operations begin." The chamber fell silent. Several species exchanged glances. The idea was not unreasonable, but it would slow down the hegemony's invasion plans. Vextar considered the proposal. After a long moment, he spoke. "The hegemony agrees to a temporary ceasefire. Evacuation vessels will be permitted for 72 hours. After that, we proceed with the operation." Jake bowed deeply. "Thank you, Council Leader. The human delegation will coordinate the evacuation efforts personally." What the aliens in the chamber did not know was that Jake had just made the most important speech of his life. Not because of what he said, but because of what his words really meant. Within hours, human ships began arriving in the Rigel system. They came from all directions: exploration vessels, cargo haulers, passenger transports, and medical ships. To the watching hegemony fleet, they looked exactly like what they claimed to be: a hastily organized rescue mission. The lead evacuation ship was called the Mercy's Hand. Its captain was Commander Ryan Bell, a man in his 40s with gray hair and kind eyes. He had spent the last 2 years working as a disaster relief coordinator on various human colonies. Everyone who met him agreed that he was one of the most caring and dedicated people they had ever known. Ryan stood on his bridge, watching as refugee ships loaded with frightened alien families departed for safer systems. His crew worked around the clock to process evacuees, provide medical care, and coordinate with local authorities. "Captain," said his communications officer, a young woman named Kelly Brooks. We're receiving reports from Evacuation Team 7. They found a large group of children separated from their families on Rigel 4. Ryan nodded immediately. Send Rescue Team 3 to that location. Make sure those children get reunited with their parents. But while Ryan was genuinely focused on saving lives, other members of his crew had additional duties. His security chief, Mark Johnson, was actually mapping every hegemony military installation within 50 light years. His medical officer, Dr. Susan Parker, was collecting biological samples from the various alien species they were helping. His engineering team was scanning hegemony ship designs and weapon systems. The evacuation operation was real and successful. Over 3 days, human ships managed to rescue nearly 2 million civilians from the Rigel system. Families were saved, children were protected, and entire communities were relocated to safety. But the operation was also the largest intelligence gathering mission in human history. Every refugee ship carried hidden sensors that recorded hegemony fleet positions. Every medical examination provided data about alien biology and physiology. Every conversation with local officials revealed details about planetary defenses and military capabilities. On the second day of the evacuation, Ryan received a priority message from Jake Morrison on Earth. Commander Bell, this is Ambassador Morrison. How are the rescue operations proceeding? Very well, Ambassador. We've evacuated over 1 million people so far. The local populations are very grateful for our assistance. Excellent work. I have one additional request. We need detailed scans of the hegemony command ship. Can your team handle that? Ryan looked out at the massive hegemony dreadnought hanging in space near his ship. It was over 2 miles long and bristled with weapons. Getting close enough for detailed scans would be dangerous. I'll see what we can do, Ryan replied. That evening, Ryan personally piloted a small medical shuttle toward the hegemony command ship. He carried medical supplies requested by some injured hegemony crew members, a perfectly reasonable humanitarian gesture. As his shuttle approached the dreadnought, Ryan activated hidden scanning equipment. Within minutes, he had recorded complete structural plans of the ship, identified its weapon systems, and mapped its shield generators. The hegemony crew that met him at the docking bay saw only a friendly human doctor, bringing supplies to help their wounded. On the third day, everything changed. Ryan was coordinating the final evacuation runs when his sensors detected movement from the hegemony fleet. The ceasefire was not supposed to end for another 6 hours, but the alien warships were powering up their weapons. Kelly, give me a channel to the hegemony command ship, Ryan ordered. The face of a hegemony officer appeared on the screen. Ryan could see the bridge of the command ship behind him, the same bridge he had scanned in detail the day before. This is Commander Bell of the evacuation fleet. We still have civilians on the surface. The ceasefire has 6 hours remaining. The hegemony officer looked at him with cold, yellow eyes. The ceasefire is over, human. Evacuation vessels will leave immediately or be fired upon. But there are still children down there, Ryan protested. Not our concern, the officer replied, and ended the transmission. Ryan watched in horror as the hegemony fleet opened fire on the planets below. Cities that had stood for thousands of years were reduced to burning ruins in minutes. The aliens, who had not been evacuated, were killed without mercy, millions of them, for the first time in 3 years. Ryan Bell stopped acting like a polite, peaceful human. His face hardened with rage as he watched the slaughter. He opened a secure channel to Earth, using codes that only a few people in the galaxy knew existed. This is Bell to Morrison. Operation Revelation is requested. Repeat. Operation Revelation is requested. Jake Morrison's voice came back immediately, and it was completely different from his usual diplomatic tone. It was cold, hard, and filled with deadly purpose. Request confirmed, Commander. You are authorized to proceed. All units, this is Ambassador Morrison. The mask comes off now. Throughout the Rigel system, human evacuation ships suddenly began to change. Whole panels slid away to reveal weapon systems that made the hegemony fleet look like children's toys. Cargo holds open to deploy. Fighter squadrons that moved faster than anything the aliens had ever seen. The Mercies. Hand transformed from a medical ship into a dreadnought that dwarfed the hegemony command vessel. Ryan Bell shed his role as a humanitarian coordinator and became what he had always really been, an admiral in the human defense force. Hegemony fleet. This is Admiral Bell. He broadcast on all frequencies. His voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded fleets in battles the aliens had never heard of. You have violated a ceasefire agreement and murdered innocent civilians. Surrender immediately or face the consequences. The hegemony officer, who had dismissed him earlier, appeared on screen again, but now his expression was one of shock and fear. Impossible, the alien whispered. You're just evacuation ships. Ryan smiled, but it was not the kind smile the aliens had grown used to seeing from humans. It was the smile of a predator that had finally stopped pretending to be prey. We were evacuation ships, he said quietly. We were also taking very detailed notes about your fleet composition, your weapon capabilities, and your tactical formations. Thank you for the information. Now surrender. The hegemony fleet tried to fight. They had superior numbers and had never lost a major battle. But within 2 hours, their entire force was either destroyed or captured. The aliens had spent 3 years underestimating human capabilities, and now they were paying the price for that mistake. As Ryan watched the last hegemony ship surrender, he thought about the 3 billion people who had died because the aliens thought humans were too weak to stop them. That mistake would never be made again. The news of the hegemony fleet's destruction spread across the galaxy in hours. Every species, every government, every military leader suddenly wanted to know the same thing. How had the humans done it? In the Galactic Council chambers, emergency sessions ran day and night. Representatives who had spent years making jokes about human weakness now sat in stunned silence. The species that had called humans servants were beginning to realize they might have made a terrible mistake. Council. Leader Vexter paced back and forth in his private chambers. His 4 arms gestured wildly as he spoke to his military advisors through a secure communication link. Explain to me how 300 human evacuation ships destroyed our entire 9th Fleet, he demanded. Explain to me how beings we thought were weak and helpless just eliminated our most powerful military force. General Corthax, the hegemony's supreme military commander, appeared on the screen. His gray skin looked pale, and his yellow eyes showed fear. Council leader, the humans were not using evacuation ships, okay? They were using warships disguised as evacuation ships. Their weapons technology is at least 50 years ahead of ours. Vexstar stopped pacing. 50 years? How is that possible? We've been watching them for 3 years. Their ships, their technology, their military, everything we saw indicated they were a primitive species. Everything we saw was a lie, Corthax replied grimly. They have been hiding their true capabilities from the beginning up. But the destruction of the hegemony fleet was only the beginning. Across the galaxy, humans were dropping their masks everywhere on the agricultural world of Haven Prime. The refugee camps that had housed displaced aliens for 2 years suddenly became something else entirely. Carl Johnson, the gentle farmer, who had spent so much time caring for alien refugees, stood before a gathering of his former charges. But Carl was no longer wearing simple work clothes. He now wore the black uniform of the Human Intelligence Corps, complete with colonel's insignia. The aliens stared at him in shock and confusion. My friends, Carl said, his voice still kind, but now carrying clear authority. For 2 years, You have shared your stories with me. You have told me about your homeworlds, your governments, your military forces. You thought you were talking to a simple farmer who cared about your welfare. He paused, looking at the faces of the aliens who had trusted him. You are right about one thing. I do care about your welfare, but I am not a simple farmer. I am Colonel Carl Johnson, and everything you told me has been passed along to Human Intelligence Services. An elderly Aquatic Federation member raised one of his tentacles. But you helped us. You gave us food, shelter, medical care. You saved our lives. Carl nodded. Yes, I did. And I would do it again. Helping you was never part of my mission. It was something I chose to do because it was the right thing. But that does not change the fact that I was also gathering information. A young crystalline collective refugee began to glow with anger. You used us. Pretended to be our friend while you spied on us. Did not pretend to be your friend, Carl replied firmly. I am your friend. That is why I am telling you this now, instead of letting you find out from someone else. You were refugees who needed help, and I helped you. You were also sources of information about your homeworlds, and I gathered that information. Both things can be true at the same time. As Carl spoke, similar scenes were playing out across dozens of worlds. Human aid workers revealed themselves to be intelligence officers. Human doctors disclosed that they had been studying alien biology. Human engineers admitted that they had been analyzing alien technology. But the biggest revelation was yet to come. On Earth, Director Helen Parker stood in the main control room of what every alien believed was a simple agricultural research facility. The room was hidden deep underground, accessible only through passages, concealed beneath wheat fields and cattle ranches. Helen was a woman in her 50s with short gray hair and sharp blue eyes. She had spent 3 years pretending to be a minor bureaucrat in the human government. Now she stood before massive screens showing star maps, fleet positions, and real-time intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Activate all planetary defense systems, she ordered. Begin Phase 2 of Operation Revelation. Around the world, the peaceful farms and cities that aliens had visited for years began to change. Grain silos opened to reveal missile launchers, barns converted into fighter pilot briefing rooms. Underground factories that had been disguised as subway systems started producing warships at an incredible rate, in orbit around Earth. What had appeared to be communication satellites suddenly unfolded into defensive platforms armed with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Space stations that had seemed designed for scientific research revealed their true purpose as military command centers. The transformation was happening everywhere. Humans lived colony worlds that had been listed as having populations of a few. Thousands were actually home to millions of trained soldiers. Mining operations in asteroid fields turned out to be shipyards building the largest fleet the galaxy had ever seen. Captain Lisa Hayes received new orders as her ship completed its global survey mission. The Terra Nova was no longer pretending to be an exploration vessel. Its true designation was revealed: THS Terra Nova, flagship of the 3rd Human Battle Fleet. Lisa stood on her bridge, now wearing the dark blue uniform of the Human Space Navy instead of the lighter blue of the Exploration Service. Her crew had also changed uniforms. Canned new crew members were arriving via transport ships, officers and specialists who had been hidden on nearby human colonies. Nancy, open a channel to all human vessels in this sector, Lisa ordered. Channel. Open, Captain. Attention all ships. This is Admiral Hayes of the Terra Nova. Operation Revelation is now active. All units are to reveal their true designations and capabilities. The mission parameters have changed. Throughout the sector, human ships began their own transformations. Cargo vessels became troop ships. Search stations became military bases. Even the civilian passenger liners revealed hidden weapon systems and military-grade shields. But the most shocking revelation came when the aliens tried to contact Earth directly. For 3 years, they had communicated with what they thought was the entire human government. A small council of peaceful leaders who always seemed eager to cooperate. Now, they discovered that those leaders had been middle-level administrators with no real power. The true human government was something much larger and more sophisticated than any alien species had imagined. Director Helen Parker appeared on screens throughout the galaxy, addressing every species simultaneously. Behind her, the control room showed the scale of human operations, star charts marking the positions of thousands of human ships, tactical displays showing real-time monitoring of every major alien military base, and communication networks that spanned the entire galaxy. People of the galaxy, Helen began, her voice calm but commanding. For 3 years, you have known us as a weak and peaceful species. You have seen us as servants, as helpers, as beings who pose no threat to your established order. She paused, allowing her words to sink in. You were correct about one thing. We are peaceful. We prefer cooperation to conflict, diplomacy to war, building to destroying. But you made a critical error in assuming that peaceful means weak. The screens behind her showed images from across the galaxy, human fleets emerging from hidden bases, human armies revealing themselves on worlds the aliens had thought were lightly populated. It's human technology that was clearly decades ahead of anything other species possessed. We have spent 3 years learning everything about you, Helen continued. We know your military capabilities, your government structures, your economic systems, your population centers. We know which of you commit crimes against other species, and which of you simply stand by and allow those crimes to happen. Camera moved closer to her face, and for the first time, aliens across the galaxy saw a human who was not smiling, not apologizing, not trying to please them. We also know that many of you are good people who have been trapped in a system controlled by bullies and criminals. That is why we are not declaring war on everyone. But for those species that have spent these years enslaving others, committing genocide, or treating peaceful beings as property, your time is over. As Helen spoke, human fleets were already moving throughout the galaxy. The hegemony's remaining military forces found themselves surrounded by ships that appeared out of nowhere. Safarian slave trading operations were shut down by human special forces teams that seemed to know exactly where to strike. Criminal organizations that had operated for centuries were being dismantled with surgical precision. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson about the difference between being nice and being weak. Humans had been nice for 3 years, allowing themselves to be insulted and dismissed. But they had never been weak. They had been patient. They had been watching. And now they were done waiting. 6 months later, Jake Morrison walked through the same doors of the Galactic Council chamber. His shoes still clicked on the shiny floor, and the sound still echoed in the huge room. But everything else had changed. The chamber was much quieter. Now, many of the seats that had once held alien representatives were empty. Some species had lost their voting rights after being found guilty of war crimes. Others had chosen not to attend, too ashamed to face the humans they had once mocked. Jake no longer wore a simple diplomatic suit. He was dressed in the formal uniform of the Human Diplomatic Corps, with silver insignia that marked him as the chief ambassador of the Terran Federation. Amy Foster walked beside him, now wearing the rank of Admiral in the Human Intelligence Service. At the center of the chamber, where Council Leader Facade had once sat in judgment over lesser species, there was now a circular table. Representatives from all remaining species sat as equals, with no one position higher than the others. The age of species looking down on others was over. Vexstar himself sat at the table as well. But he was no longer the leader of anything. The hegemony had been dissolved after their war crimes trials. Their territories had been freed and were now protected by human peacekeeping forces. Vexstar was lucky to be alive. Many of his former colleagues were serving long prison sentences on various human-controlled worlds. The former council leader looked much smaller now. His forearms were folded defensively, and his yellow eyes kept looking down at the table instead of meeting anyone's gaze. When Jake approached, Vexstar finally looked up. "Ambassador Morrison," he said, quietly. Or should I say, Chief Ambassador Morrison. Jake sat down across from him with the same polite smile he had worn for 3 years. "Either one is fine, Vexstar. How are you adjusting to the new arrangements? Your people have been fair," Vexstar admitted reluctantly. "The war crimes tribunals were conducted properly. Sentences were just. My people who were not involved in military operations have been allowed to rebuild their worlds." Jake nodded. "That was always our intention. We never wanted to punish innocent people for the crimes of their leaders." Nearby, Crickstall shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The former Safarian representative had also lost his position of power. The Safarian Republic's slave trading operations had been completely shut down, and their government had been forced to pay massive reparations to their former victims. "The servants have become the masters," Crickstall muttered, his blue feathers ruffled with barely contained anger. Jake turned to look at him with the same patient expression he had always shown. "No, Crickstall. We were never servants, and we are not masters now. We are peacekeepers. There is a difference." "Is there?" Crickstall snapped. "You have fleets patrolling our space. You have soldiers on our worlds. You control our trade routes. How is that different from what the hegemony did?" Amy leaned forward slightly. "The difference is that we will leave whenever you ask us to, as long as you can prove you will not return to your old ways. The hegemony never gave their subjects that choice." Jake stood up and walked to the large viewing screen that showed the space around the station. Outside, human warships could be seen patrolling alongside vessels from a dozen other species. But these were not conquest fleets. They were mixed crews working together to keep the peace. 6 months ago, this galaxy was ruled by fear, Jake said, speaking to the entire assembly. Strong species dominated weak ones. Criminals operated freely as long as they paid tribute to the right governments. Entire populations were enslaved or exterminated, and the rest of us just looked the other way. He turned back to face the representatives. "Now, trade routes are open to everyone. Former slave worlds are rebuilding with help from their neighbors. Pirates and raiders have been eliminated. Wars between species have ended." "Is this really worse than what came before?" Zareth, the crystalline collective representative, spoke up. Her purple crystalline body chimed softly as she moved. "Your methods were deceptive, Ambassador. You lied to us for years." "We did," Jake agreed without hesitation. "We pretended to be weaker than we were. We pretended not to notice crimes that disgusted us. We smiled and bowed while we gathered the information we needed to eventually stop those crimes. Yes, we were deceptive." He walked back to the table and placed his hands on its surface. "But tell me, Zareth, would you have preferred that we announced our true capabilities from the beginning? Would the hegemony have stopped committing genocide if we had asked nicely? Would the Zephyrians have freed their slaves because we said?" "Please," Zareth's crystalline features showed no emotion, but her silence was answer enough. An elderly representative from the Aquatic Federation raised one tentacle. "What happens now, Ambassador? Do humans rule the galaxy forever?" Jake smiled, and for the first time in months, it was the same warm smile that aliens had seen during the years of human diplomacy. "Counselor Riftel, humans have no desire to rule anyone. Our goal was always to create a galaxy where every species could live in peace and freedom. Now that we have achieved that goal, we want to maintain it." Okay. Amy stood up and activated a holographic display in the center of the table. It showed a new galactic government structure that was very different from the old council system. The new Galactic Federation will be governed by elected representatives from all member species, she explained. No single species will have veto power over the others. Decisions will be made by majority vote, with protection for minority rights. And what about humans? Asked a small, furry being from the Woodland Alliance. You have special privileges because of your military power. Jake shook his head. Humans will have the same vote as everyone else. Our ships will continue patrolling and keeping the peace, but only as long as the Federation requests it. If the day comes when other species can maintain galactic peace without us, we will gladly return to our own worlds. This statement caused surprised murmurs throughout the chamber. Several representatives exchanged glances of disbelief. Vexter spoke again, his voice thoughtful. You could rule us all by force. Your military superiority is absolute. Why offer us equality instead? Jake sat back down and looked directly at the former hegemony leader. 'Cause ruling by force is what you did, Vextar. It is what the old system was built on. Spent 3 years watching the results of that system, and we decided we wanted something better. He gestured to the viewing screen, where ships from multiple species were working together. Look out there, do you see? Human ships forcing others to obey. Or do you see cooperation? Do you see conquest? Or do you see partnership? Captain Lisa Hayes chose that moment to enter the chamber. She now held the rank of Fleet Admiral and commanded the entire human peacekeeping force, but she was not alone. With her came Commander Shrixtel, the Zephyrian officer whose research station she had saved months earlier. Counselors, Lisa announced as she approached the table. I am pleased to report that the joint patrol mission in the Outer Rim has been successful. Zephyrian and human crews working together have eliminated the last of the pirate bases in that sector. Shrixtel stepped forward, his blue feathers now bright with pride instead of ruffled with fear. Admiral Hayes and her crew continue to prove that cooperation achieves more than domination ever could. Jake looked around the table at the alien faces watching this exchange. Some still showed suspicion and resentment. Others displayed curiosity and even hope. Few seemed genuinely pleased with the changes. This is what we want for the galaxy, Jake said quietly. Not human rule, but cooperation. Not human superiority, but partnership. We revealed our true strength not to dominate you, but to protect the innocent and stop the guilty. Shrixtel finally spoke again, his voice less angry than before. And if we agree to this new federation, Kate, if we accept human peacekeeping and human oversight, what guarantee do we have that you will not eventually become the same tyrants you replaced? Jake stood up one more time and walked to where Shrixtel sat. He extended his hand in the human gesture of friendship. You have no guarantee except our word and our actions over time. But consider this. We could have implemented any system we wanted after our victory. We could have made ourselves your emperors. Instead, we are offering you a voice in your own government. After a long moment, Shrixtel reached out and shook Jake's hand. Perhaps, he said slowly, there is wisdom in giving servants a chance to prove they can be leaders. Jake's smile grew wider. We were never servants, Shrixtel. We were students. For 3 years, we studied this galaxy and learned what needed to be changed. We would like to work with you to build something better. As the session continued, one by one, the alien representatives began to voice their support for the new federation. It would not be easy. Centuries of mistrust and conflict could not be healed overnight. But for the first time in galactic history, every species would have an equal voice in their shared future, outside the chamber windows. Human and alien ships continued their joint patrols, protecting trade routes and keeping the peace. The galaxy was learning that true strength came not from the ability to dominate others, but from the wisdom to know when to use that strength and when to show restraint. The moment the Galactic Council realized that humanity's courtesy was just a facade had passed. Now they were discovering what lay beneath that facade, not cruelty or hunger for power, but a commitment to justice and peace that was stronger than any weapon. The humans had stopped pretending to be weak, but they had never stopped being kind.